Thanks very much.
Has your editor or agent ever wanted you to make a change you didn't agree with?
Sure.
How does that work? Do they get their way, or do you get yours?
Well, it depends on each thing is individual. Each instance of something like that. For instance, if you look in Wake, the dedication is, this one's for you, Toots, and people ask me sometimes, who's Toots? And actually that's a name, a pet name that Cable called Janie toward the end of the book. He'd call her, and now he calls her Hannigan or something like that,
Yeah.
which I liked as well. And he did that back in the first draft too.
Oh, that's great.
But he also had this a little slightly more personal name for her, and my editor felt that was a really dated term, and it is. I mean, it's been around for a while, and I was kind of hoping to bring it back, but obviously we carry very little power in that area of things, and she asked if I would change it. Now, she didn't know that was also a nickname for a friend of mine who is kind of why I used that in the first place. But I decided, well, okay, we're taking it out of the book, but I'm going to make sure it gets in the book, and so I put it in the dedication instead. So there.
That's nice.
Settled that one.
Really nice.
So
Yeah. So, do you feel that it's easier or harder to write once you've been published and you have those expectations and deadlines on you? I mean, before you're ever published, then you're writing wondering, is this ever going anywhere? But then after again, then you have people really expecting something, so.
I like the deadline, and I like working without it too. But I'm very much a procrastinator when I do have a deadline, but I always get it done in time. So if I don't have a deadline, I'll still do the work, and I'll probably put a deadline on myself if I'm working on something that's outside of what's under contract. But I do like that urgency, that somebody's waiting for something. That gets me to really kick it in gear and get going on something.
Any advice for aspiring writers beyond keep trying? That's the ones we always get. Just keep trying.
Yeah. Sure. I would say find the books that you love the most, the ones that you read over and over again. And instead, read it again, and instead of reading it like a reader, read it like a writer. And look at what is compelling you to read on. What do you love so much about this book? What is it? Just figure it out, what it is, and write it down, and then try and imitate that. What is it about the characters that make you love them or hate them? And figure out what that is. How is it because of how deep the author goes into their psyche? Is it because of their personality or the way they make decisions? What is it about that character that intrigues you so much? And that's how I would suggest to study how to be a writer. Because it's very hard to study it, because writing something can be so different from one person to the next. I think it's really important to find the kind of books that you love and want to be, in the authors that you want to be like.
That's a great suggestion. I actually have not read or heard that before.
I just made it up.
Do that kind of automatically now, but only, before I got really into writing my book, I never did that, but now I don't seem to be able to read a book without doing that.
Yeah.
You automatically start picking it apart.
Yeah, and that's hard, because that's the way you read from now on, There's a few books that have made me forget that I write, and that's really rare and wonderful to come across those, and like The Hunger Games was one of those that I didn't read it.
Just loved those.
I did
They were
too.
great.
Yeah, it was fantastic.
So I know
can't wait
the
for
next
the
one
third
of
one to come
those
out.
is,
Me too.
I think it's
August.
August.
Such a cliffhanger.
August?
August 24, I think.
Oh.
Yeah.
There is no
So-
District 12.
Yeah, that was a great closing line, but we all went, oh.
I know, they got us on that one.
Let's see. I was curious, 'cause I've got my guys, Chances 13, Cass is 11. I know you've got Killian and Kennedy, 16 and 13.
You got it.
So,
Stalker.
do they? The interview. That's what he said.
Yes.
I wasn't kidding when I said she works very hard.
So are they your first readers since you write young adult?
Often they are. My husband's actually probably my first reader. And he loves to read my stuff. He can't wait to get home from work to see what I've written that day. And some days I don't let him because it's just trash. And he's so upset. And he's like, oh, I've been waiting. What happens next? You know, it's wonderful. But my kids do read my stuff too. At first I wouldn't let them read Wake because, you know, there's some language and situations in there. But my son was 13, and it was before the book came out, actually, that I let him read the Ark. And then my daughter read them when she was 12. She's 13 now. And they've been very helpful. In Crier's Cross, which is upcoming, I just got my first edits back from my editor, and I'm going to ask my daughter to read it because just an incidental, in the main character, Kendall, has OCD, which my daughter also has. So I want her to read it and make sure everything sounds right, you know? Because, you know, as a parent of someone with OCD, I've seen the outside of the struggle, but I don't know the inside of the struggle. And it's just it's a really tough thing to have. But that's not what the story's about. She's just an incidental, you know. She
Have
just
you
happens to
ever
have
based a scene on a suggestion of theirs?
No, I usually have the full story done and fairly well edited before I
Right.
throw it by them to make sure they approve of the language, you know, just the slang that I use or whatever, because they'll tell me, Mom, that word was so
Oh,
2007.
yeah, it's great
you know.
having teenagers
It
in the
is,
house.
it's awesome. They're very helpful, and I don't want to write anything that's so trendy that you can pin a year to it, you know.
Right.
So they're very helpful for that.